Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for participating today's World Energy Pulse Asia dialogue, and also thank you for your support for the Pulse survey. All of us are more or less experiencing an impact from the current energy crisis caused by the Russian invasion to Ukraine, and studying and discussing how to maneuver into this turmoil situation. Under those uncertain circumstances, and this World Energy Pulse provides valuable insight how World Energy community and energy leaders are analyzing a situation and preparing for the transition in the turmoil. We can find and also learn from this pulse about global impact and differences by the regions. For instance, Asia can learn from Europe, having most impact from this crisis, how we need to prepare for the changes of the transition. Today, we have Miss Lana Nwosu from WEC Global Secretariat to explain the key contents of the Pulse. And we have distinguished facilitator and panelist. Facilitator is Miss Xiaowei Liu, WEC Director of Special Projects. And two panelists are Mr. Pang, member of the Executive Board, China Petroleum and Chemical Industry Federation, and Mr. Tim Rockell, Managing Director and founder of Energy Strat Asia. After opening remarks, and Lana will explain the key contents of key outcomes of the Pulse survey, and then Miss Liu will facilitate discussions among the panelists and question and answers from the audience. I hope that you will actively participate the discussions and get some more information from today's dialogue. Tatsu will explain briefly the housekeeping rule and the schedule or program of this dialogue. Thank you. Tatsu?
Thank you, Muraki-san. So today's agenda, we have 5 points. Firstly, thank you for making opening remarks from Sam. So secondly, from our Global Secretariat Office of World Energy Council, Ms. Lana will provide a brief presentation of Pulse results. And thirdly, the panelists will provide their perspective for the regional result of the World Energy Pulse insights. And fourthly, we will have a discussion and Q&A time. So today's housekeeping rule is here, you can see. So during the session, please mute your mic. If you have any questions or troubles during the session, please use the chat function. And if you can't use the chat function, please use the raise hand button. So please note, this webinar is recorded and it will be available on the Council YouTube later. So this is the housekeeping rule today. So I will pass to Lana. So please give the presentation of the Pulse results.
Thank you, Tatsu. And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Lana Nwosu, the Director for Policy and Markets here at the Global Secretariat. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you all again. We thank the Chair for the opening remarks. I am going to talk to all of us today around the World Energy Pulse Insights, the global outlook, and also some conversation around the regional outlook. And I think I welcome you all today because it's important, as we have the engagements today, that we actually have a dialogue. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is, from the results, we're going to be trying to set the scene so that everybody can have a constructive dialogue as facilitated by Xiaowei. Next slide, please, Tatsu. Thank you, Tatsu. One of the very important things that we have gleaned from our community over the years is placing society at the heart of the energy transitions is actually one way of making sure that we can all contribute towards the pace of transitions. The World Energy Pulse shows that leaders' optimism about the pace has decreased rapidly. We had concluded a previous pulse in the previous months, and we are seeing that there are changes from the optimism of the leadership. At the same time, leaders, about 18% more of them, are seeing greater fragmentation as new and cascading crises affect energy systems and consumers worldwide. This is very important. We are in a very, what I call the triple challenges within the energy ecosystem. So really, the World Energy Pulse reinforces the importance of placing society at the heart of the transitions. The war in Europe, in Ukraine, and resulting energy supply and cost of living crisis that is impacting all of us have served as stark reminders of the challenges that come with just tackling supply side solutions without also addressing demand. In doing so, we are missing a golden opportunity, but we create the real risk of societal unrest if we do not place society at the heart of the transitions. Successfully managing energy transitions must not only involve the three pillars of the World Energy Trilemma, but also incorporate solutions that speaks to the needs of the energy consumer. It is in this light that we have carried out this survey across 6 regions and 79 countries with close to 600 respondents participating. Next slide, please, Tatsu. So 6 key areas regarding the insight from the Energy Pulse done in August. The first, transitions in turmoil. As we indicated earlier, 2020 and preceding months have seen further crises and challenges around energy security and climate security, which has shed light on other insecurities. We are currently in a crisis, not just on the energy side, but also including water, food, industrial competitiveness, and jobs. So leadership optimism about the pace has decreased. The Council's work around the pulse that was conducted in April showed that climate change reported as the primary concern in most regions except in Europe. But compounding crisis has now redirected that attention to managing affordability and multi-dimensional security in parallel. So survey responses from participants point to the need for better quality leadership dialogue, which connects price and system cost, access, and affordability, an area that I hope we can deep dive into as we talk on Asia today. The second area, energy security, is reframing affordable climate security actions. There is the requirement to return to a more balanced World Energy Trilemma approach to energy policy making so that leaders can make effective choices globally. While we see that energy security is ranked highest priority globally, followed closely by environmental sustainability, and lastly by energy affordability and equity, international collaboration for energy transition and the food energy water nexus are perceived as the highest risk in the current crisis. the rising need for a just and equitable and inclusive energy transition. Supply-side technologies, including storage, low-carbon hydrogen, which I know is very prominent in this part of the world, smart grids, carbon capture and storage, are regarded as very important to accelerate this transition. We have seen top-down government-led responses to crisis appear to be evident across the board from our survey. While we are getting feedback to indicate there is an absence of bottom-up or consumer-led leadership models. In Asia, what is the perspective around this? The voices and choices holding leaders to account. Almost 40% of respondents believe that policymakers are the biggest target audience for energy literacy improvement. That number on a global scale is highest in North America and Africa, in contrast to Latin America and the Caribbean, where citizens are regarded the priority group for energy literacy programs. What does the picture look like in our region in Asia? The next one is new interventions by governments. Governments are seen as a critical role player in the transition process, specifically around infrastructure, research and development, regulations, and other policies. The results are showing us that there is no quick fix to the cost of living crisis. What are the solutions that can be used in partnership with governments in Asia as we come to support governments as part of the transition process? The final area is, how will the new drivers of demand-driven energy security reshape the energy geopolitics? Would it be bottom-led? Would it be top-down? In most regions, we see the strengthening and extending of the electricity grid and diversification of the generation mix. We see in parts of the globe, North America as an example, that enhancing resilience to global energy shocks appears to be the priority action from a leadership choice. In Europe, diversifying the generation mix and energy imports are seen as preferred solutions. It will be good to understand the picture in Asia as well. Next slide, Tatu. The next couple of slides, we are just going to pick a few areas, specifically as we relate to Asia in the region. So we had seen that we had mentioned leaders see no quick return to stability, as these multiple crises are once in a lifetime crises that are shaking up the energy ecosystem. The question that we need to ponder on, and we welcome our speakers as they reflect, is recovery is not anticipated anytime soon. We are seeing global respondents agreeing that it will take between 1 to 5 years before the return to stability. How do we see that picture in Asia? Is it going to take us that long to return to this? And as we reflect, what would it take to ensure we can secure the stability? We see the picture on my screen. The regional perspective in Asia shows that the respondents actually collaborate this, in that close to over 50% are seeing that the return to stability could be between 1 to 5 years. Next slide, Tatu. The new and compounding crisis, and I must state, there might be more, specifically as we're going through energy affordability, food crisis as well. These new and compounding crises, cascading disruptions impact all world regions. In Asia specifically, when we look at the climate change responses, 25% in Asia, and the European energy security crisis, 24% are head-to-head as leading concerns. Is that narrative? How do we see that narrative? Is climate change an issue that is surpassing energy security, or is it vice versa? Next slide, Tatu. The energy trilemma, the dimensions of security, sustainability, and affordability are challenges everywhere. but the policy menu varies from region to region. In Asia, regional priorities differ, with energy security ranking as very high in Europe and Latin America. Environmental sustainability is ranking highest in Asia, according to the respondents that we got from this recent survey. So the question, as we ponder and we could deliberate today, is where is the season of environmental sustainability? Should we focus on that alone, or how do we start to balance the issues of security, environmental sustainability, and affordability as well in a region like Asia? Next slide, Tatu. Supply-side technologies and user behaviors are seen as key for accelerating transitions. 48% of global respondents consider supply-side technologies, including electricity storage, low-carbon hydrogen, smart grids, carbon capture, as storage as important in the technology innovation mix for accelerating clean and just energy transition. In Asia, we know we have a lot of innovation in Asia. On the supply side, we have seen a lot of activities around storage, a lot of activities around hydrogen. How does that support the supply side technologies, improving that, and how has the user behaviors been impacted by these technologies? Next slide, please, Tatsu. Top-down responses to the world's first demand-driven crisis will not be enough. We had mentioned that transition is in turmoil. Globally, 57% respondents believe there is no or very little evidence of bottom-up leadership models emerging in their country. We noticed a high ranking in Asia. When we talk about bottom-up leadership, how is the society in the heart of all the decisions that are being made? Is it only government-led? And do we see the benefits of having bottom-up leadership models within Asia? Next slide, Tatu. Policymakers need to improve energy literacy. Energy literacy empowers people to make wise choices. It allows people to have a voice and to participate in policy debates. This would also allow people to hold their energy leaders to account. However, what is the starting point? In this recent survey, almost 40% of respondents believe that policymakers themselves are the biggest target audience for the energy literacy improvement. It will be good to hear from the speakers what their views are around energy literacy, whether it's at a societal level or with policy stakeholders as well. And on this point, we also welcome a lot of feedback through the chat. If as I'm presenting this, do you have any observations, comments, or questions, please be sure to put that through to the chat. Next slide, Tatu. Power grid and generation mix are seen as focus areas. In most regions, strengthening and extending the electricity grid and diversifying the generation mix appear as priority choices. Next slide, Tatu. Next slide, please. So before I conclude, as part of the insights, we are seeing Asia as one region. We recognize that it is very diverse. So I do welcome comments from the speakers as they reflect and the audience on what are the implications of that diversity within the region. Thank you all, and we'll pass on to Xiaowei.
Thanks, Lana, for that wonderful summary of the findings from the August survey. As Lana mentioned, this is the second edition, and we also see increased participation from Asia, which is great. So we would hope to see more in future. So today, we are very honored to have invited two prestigious energy insiders, yeah, not insiders, insiders, meaning I created the word, meaning that they have a lot of insights to share with us. Particularly, Lana mentioned in the 6 top findings, there are global consistencies, but there are variants across region. So there are questions around each of them about what does it mean in Asia? Does that reflect the picture of energy and energy transition in our part of the world? So let me, first of all, passing that response to Tim to hear from him. Tim has distinguished career ranging from running business, previously working for Tim, I forgot that consultancy that you have worked 20 plus years. That's what I remember.
KPMG. Yes,
KPMG. Yes, KPMG, right. How could I forgot that? And he's now running also, his own consulting, also focusing on energy. We also have Mr. Pang, who is the executive board member and vice secretary general from the China Petroleum and Chemical Industry Federation. That federation had members of more than 2,000, that's what I know, and carried the whole value chain of petroleum and petrochemical. So very pleased to have both of them on board. Shall I first pass on to Tim first?
You may, and I don't have any slides, so I hope that you can all see me, and I will just pass some comments around the survey in the next few minutes. But first of all, I'd like to say that it's an absolute pleasure to be involved with the World Energy Council again. I attended the first Congress that I attended was back in Buenos Aires in 2001, and then the subsequent ones after that. And then I moved to the Middle East and lost a little bit of touch with the World Energy Council. And I've been in Singapore now for 10 years. So it's almost good in many ways to see life come full circle, and absolute pleasure to be asked to be involved in this session today. I think I'll sum up my comments in 3 key areas. One generally about the survey. I believe 18% of respondents were from Asia. I think that's a good response and is typical of many global surveys. But of course, this is a very diverse and contrasting region. And I think that we need to encourage more of our WEC members to participate in these surveys regularly, so we get a good voice of Asia. And we really need that if we need to understand the starting point that we're at. In terms of energy security, I believe energy security is going to trump energy transition for the remainder of this decade, and perhaps put us on course for a very different energy transition that's probably been dominated by renewable energy so far. And what I'm talking about is more nuclear, more gas in the mix, replacing coal, more carbon capture and more ammonia, particularly around fuel replacement in shipping and for coal power. Now, in terms of the cost of energy security, I don't think the lights will go out, but I'm sure there'll be a huge price to pay in building new infrastructure, not just for existing and diversifying supply, but for energy transition. So, we've all seen numbers from IEA in terms of the trillions, and I think those trillions aren't going to go away. So how to finance that, particularly in this part of the world where a lot of the infrastructure tends to be financed by the public sector as opposed to other regions of the world. So another comment about Asia, surveys often lump Asia together, there's 1 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India and South Asia, 750 million here where I am in Southeast Asia, and we don't all look at the world through a single lens. So I think we can start to delve a little bit deeper and understand perhaps the differences with the energy economies in Japan and Korea, who in some cases are more akin to what's happening in the West's major economies. But from that, Asia's starting from a very different position from the plateauing economies of North America and Europe. The region's still growing on many fronts in terms of GDP, industrial output, urbanization, getting efficient transportation, and I'm talking about within the mega cities, within the secondary cities, and also intra-regional travel, all the way down to getting energy access into the rural areas. And the other comment I would make as well is that energy is a greater unit of GDP than in what I would call the West. So higher energy prices impact us harder. And it means that subsidies, when they're in place, are much harder to phase out. So some insights from the region. Multilateral policy development, I would say, is rare in Asia. It's worth stating for our wider audience that ASEAN is not the European Union in political structure, for instance, and this will impact the speed of energy connectivity. I noticed from the survey that Asia is a very optimistic region on return to normality. This is probably not a surprise. In my experience working in that consulting firm you mentioned, I've always noticed that there was a much greater desire for the employees on this side of the world in the Eastern Hemisphere to get on with stuff and make things happen and put technology in place. And I dare say that some resistance from those in head office back in Europe and North America. So, you know, the fact that people want change fast is not a surprise to me. I thought it was interesting, though, that Asia sees a less bipolar world than the Western Hemisphere. And I think that's interesting because we're still emerging from the pandemic here. I've traveled extensively since I was allowed to travel since December. I think I've done 4 trips to Malaysia since April, and I've traveled to Europe, UK, and I'm off to the Middle East next week. But that's all new, and we're still emerging from the pandemic. And I do worry that other parts of the world have kind of had an accelerator on this GMT +8 time zone, I call it. I know some are +9, but and even plus more, but I call it GMT +8 for most of us in Asia are on this time zone. And so I think there is some issues. My final takeaway, I think there has been an overemphasis generally across the board on reducing carbon emissions and focusing back on the energy trilemma of security, equity, and sustainability. I think sometimes carbon emissions are talking about, not just in this survey, but more generally, we don't always consider the equity of transition. We don't look at, other societal needs won't go away just because we're transitioning and we have an energy security crisis. I think conversations have got better in terms of direction since COP26, which was held in my country, United Kingdom, in Glasgow. Looking forward to the next COP and what comes out. But as we all know, decarbonisation all starts and ends with energy. And in my view, you've got dollars, you've got molecules, you've got electrons. And without those three, nothing else happens in the world. So it's absolutely crucial when we talk about energy literacy that people understand them. And I think it's one of those areas that it's not taught at lots of levels, including right from the very early years. We tend not to learn about finance, and we definitely don't learn about energy until it's too late. So I think I'll pause there, and there's plenty of time for the chat later on, but hope that was fine in terms of my initial reflections.
Thank you, team, for a wonderful headline, covers so many angles, and also responding to some of the questions Lana early put on. I really felt, that's quite a lot we can dig deeper in some of the comments that you mentioned. As you mentioned, Asia is so diverse. It's difficult just to use one survey to give us, what's representative of this large, diverse, and very dynamic region. With that, let's park, if you have many burning questions, hold it for a moment. We would like to hear from Mr. Pang from China. The team already alluded to, China only have 1.4 billion people, and China only probably is not a homogeneous market by itself. But let's hear a bit more from Mr. Pang, that he will tell us more about, from China perspective, what are the trends and signals in terms of energy and energy transition. So, Mr. Pang, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Xiaowei. I just heard, a very impressive sharing of Lana's insight. It is so good. It do reflect the reality in China. I do agree with your ideas, but of course we have other considerations. Maybe today we can share some. So maybe I can share some. I prepare some slides to share. Yeah, to give you some idea, in Chinese, if you are familiar with China, there is 4 characters in China that are very popular in China. Means megatrend, innate law, strategy and tactics, and also just mind. Very important. It is called the megatrend. That is, we should first have a very comprehensive understanding of the megatrend at present and in the future. So it is very important. There is one famous saying in Chinese, means that it is impossible to have a very good plan for the present without any long-term considerations. And also it is impossible to handle the current situation without any overall planning. Yeah, that's the reason. So I'd like to share some, next slide, please, to give you some global trends and also China trends. So you can see for the global trends, the first one, it is COVID-19. Really, it is bringing about a lot of uncertainties in the future. Even at the present China, we are not so free to be traveling outside of China, and also even in China, it is very difficult. Like Beijing is right now, we are not allowed to go outside Beijing. It is so difficult. Anyway, I do hope the situation will be better very soon. The second one, it is called climate change. Really accelerates low carbon transition. This is a topic we are discussing today. You have noticed the extreme weather conditions this year in many countries, especially like in the regions of Shanghai and East China. In the past, there is no such seasons. The temperature is more than 40 degrees centigrade, but this year it is very serious. So everyone is believing that it is so difficult, to reach the Paris Agreement target unless we have a very deep reduction in greenhouse emission reduction. Yeah, next slide, please. And also, as a third one, it is called industrial and supply chain restructuring. As you have noticed, whether it is by the COVID or by the trade protectionism, the trade war between China and also the States, and also the Russian and Ukraine war. You have noticed that it is really creating a lot of headaches, especially for the supply chain. Yeah, this is a serious headaches. Next one, please. And the fourth one, it is high inflation and growth slowdown. Really, thing goes stagflation risk. As in the States, even this month it is 8.3, giving a lot of troubles even now. And also for Europe, I noticed last month it is nearly 9.1% already. Like in England, it is 10.1% already. But in China and Japan, it's much better. Now it is only between 2.4 to 2.6 actually. But this kind of inflation and growth slowdown, it is really giving a lot of troubles. Yeah, this is the fourth trend. Next one, it is called disruptive technologies. It is really changing our future, whether it is 5G or digitalization in industries. Anyway, yeah, this is for some global trends. So, the topic today for the energy transition, we should pay close attention to the global trends and also in China. The next one, we will share some slides on China. The first one, we call it profound changes unseen in a century. And, in China, we are paying close attention to dual circulation. That is not only in international market, but more concentrated in domestic market. That's the reason we call it dual circulation. It is very important because the international environment are now getting much more complicated, with the profound changes. Yeah, and in the century, a lot of this kind of changes. Next one, it is called regional economic cooperation. Brings a lot of new opportunities like RCEP. effective beginning, I mean, of this year, like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. You know, we are in the same free trade zone now already in RCEP. So it is giving us a lot of new opportunities, even for the, I mean, new energies. It is another very good opportunity. Next one, please. But you should know that in China, because the central government is paying close attention to the high quality development, as you have noticed, you know, such saying beginning from 2 years ago. Now, for instance, in China, we are, you know, having a kind of a very good policy called the common prosperity. That is, we should guarantee all the people in Chinese are getting rich together. So we call it a common prosperity. This is like energy. I mean, equality is so important. Yeah, that's the main meaning of that. Next one. As in China now, you know, like a carbon peak and also carbon neutrality, we are paying so high attention for that. Like last year, the State Council released the opinion of, I mean, national policies. And after that, all the industries, they released, I mean, different sectors, I mean, policies, like our petroleum and chemical industry. We just released last month. Yeah, we're giving a lot of implementation plans for this one. And also there are some guaranteeing policies to safeguard the carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Yeah, next one, please. And also the fourth one, it is called a new infrastructure, new energy and digitalization drive new growth, especially for the, you know, new energy. We call it clean energy in China, like electric vehicles, because last year it is nearly the total production, it is 6.8 million, I mean, units or sets. Only in China, it is more than 3.5 sets. So traumatic figure. Even the first half of this year, it is already more than 3.7 million units already. So you can see the great change. I mean, development speed for our clean energy electric vehicles for this kind of site. The next one, it is called the population aging triggers economic and social impacts, because more than 70% now in China, you know, we are more than 60 years old. There is one, I mean, statistic in Shanghai. Now in Shanghai, it is more than 25% already. The people are more than 60 years old. So it is just like Japan. We are, you know, entering into a new age called population aging. Yeah, it is creating a lot of other headaches as well. So to give you some ideas on global and China trends. Yeah, this is the trends. Next one, please. Like the carbon neutrality, you know, all the countries are focusing on carbon neutrality roadmaps, mainly on industry policies, because we know that more than 73% of the global, I mean, greenhouse emission coming from energy consumption. That's the reason we should develop a very clean energy, reduce thermal power supply, reduce the buildings emissions, increase green buildings, reduce transport emissions, and also reduce industrial emissions like we are talking about right now, and also reduce agricultural emissions. Yeah, this is some roadmaps. Next one, please. But for China, you know, for the carbon neutrality, you can see, I mean, outlook for the future energy consumption structure. You can see now we are mainly concentrated on the primary energy on coal, but the coal, it is only 56%. But in the year 2050 or 2060, I mean, the coal will be coming down very dramatically until 5 to 8%, but the renewables will be more than 80%. So some people are saying this is kind of a mission impossible. But from your insight, we know that this is the trend we cannot avoid. Definitely, China is going very, I mean, seriously to this direction. Next one, please. Next slide. So for next frontier of clean technology, like we are discussing about renewable power, clean hydrogen, or battery energy storage also, Insight also have such, predictions, and also CCS or CCUS. Next one, please. And also, we are talking about new opportunities in China, like the green hydrogen. It is very popular, very hot in China. Yeah, next one, please. And also, renewable energy sources, it is really bringing a lot of new opportunities, like solar power. China is having a very big share in this kind of, solar power, this kind of field. Next one, please. And also, today we are discussing about, the bottom-up, this kind of policy. To give you one instance, like this one, bio-based energy, like from the stack or straw, we are producing the biochar. By this kind of biochar, we are, burning from the countryside. So it is very good. It is the kind of a methodology used in China. Maybe it will change, the lifestyle of consumption for the energy. Yeah, this is one example of that. Next one, please. And also CCS now in China is also very, very popular already. More than 50 projects are now being planned in China for some big ones like Shell, ExxonMobil now are planning like 40 million metric ton in Great Bay area. So it is a very good project. Next one, please. Of course, we are having other additional considerations. For instance, when we talk about the world energy trilemma, for this kind of energy transition, it is not only an energy issue, but also it is a kind of economic and political point of view. Yeah, so we should consider from other points as well. And also we should, to analyze the mega trend. Like the ratio of clean energy. Now in China, it is already nearly 26% already. Big change, like the electric vehicles, it is already, the coverage in the market is already 11 million, units already. And also for the new now security, for the skilling triangle. Of course, it is triangle, but it is not so equal triangle. So we should pay some attention now in China. Like beginning from last year, we are more paying close attention to the security of the power supply. Yes, so it is very important. And also we have other considerations like a dynamic mechanism, how we can guarantee to give a kind of incentive to people consumption. Yeah, this is very important. And also for the cost sharing and equality, how to avoid such headaches, brought by energy transition to guarantee the equality of the people. Yeah, this is some considerations from us. Next one, please. Yeah, because we are coming from a China Petroleum and Chemical Industry Federation called CPCF in short. So to redefine CPCF, it is a commitment, passion, collaboration, integrity, and foresight. Hope we can have a very good partner with World Energy Council. Join hands with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pang, for sharing with us, not just, the global trends, but more deep dive into what's happening in China, cover a wide range of things, not just energy. You touched upon COVID, you touched upon aging population and its impact. I really like your optimism when you talk about supply chain. So far, the word I normally hear associated with supply chain is disruption. You actually talked about restructure. I think that's again indicated a reflection of the optimism that Lana earlier talked about our region, and also Tim mentioned as well. I think there's some common areas both of you touched about our region, from technology aspects, from infrastructure going forward, regional trade and regional collaboration. I really liked the optimism you talked about at the end, about commitment, passion, collaboration, integrity, as well as foresight. I think we needed all of those for a just and clean transition for the future. Thank you both, and also Lana, for sharing, the survey from the council, from the views from the region, plus China, and the deep dive, and really a lot for us to think about. I'm sure our audience are thinking about, what other questions they would like to ask. I'd like to ask Tatsu, do we see anything from the chat? Any questions from the audience?
Hi, Xiaowei. Yep. Nothing so far. So for participants, please freely to post your concern or question to panelists. So please use the chat function. So if you can't use the chat function, please raise your hand and speak your question to the panelists. Thank you.
Right. If not, maybe I can pose a question. I know that, there is Lana mentioned in her sharing from the survey across the world, there's a lack of evidence of bottom-up energy leadership. It's not just Asia, but I'm glad that Mr. Pang actually given one example of bottom-up energy leadership in the China context, which is like biofuels. Yeah, I'm sure across Asia there are many other such examples. So the question to our panelists, including Sam, Sam has also a lot of energy-related experience. Are there any examples that you have seen across our region that actually representing some bottom-up energy leadership, meaning that community-driven or private sector-driven, not so much by government-led? Who wanted to take this up first? Okay, team, go ahead.
I was holding back because I always put my hand up first, but yeah. Let's get this going. I think when you talk about bottom up and you sort of defined it there, really kind of not government but community led. It's kind of where is the bottom, if you like, before you start looking at things. But we've seen here in Singapore, one of the leading Singapore banks, refusing to finance coal and coal power, and I think that's an interesting example. We're also seeing some of the grid players, although you could argue some of that is kind of sort of semi-government, kind of looking at some of the smart grids and interconnectivity in the region. But I think the one that I would really point out is it's really coming from the corporate sector, and that's in corporate sustainability statements and messages that these companies, particularly listed companies, are making. And they have to be held account whether they realise it or not, having made those statements. But if you make a statement to the stock exchange, you better abide by it. And I think some of these statements are being quite fanciful. I'm probably talking wider than the region here, to be honest with you, but I think we've seen kind of slower development on some of the actual statements made in this part of the world, but I'm sure that they will come. But I think these companies are now challenged with saying, well, how do I actually then kind of reduce my footprint? How do I reduce my carbon? What do I do? And that's really, I think, a pretty good example of bottom up. And you could say it's driven by employees, it's driven by customers, it's driven by people who use services. So I think that's a good example of what I would say is bottom up. But I don't think people have realized what a big statement they're saying when they're saying we're going to be net zero by 2050, or even going back into the past, as some American companies have said. So yeah, I welcome other examples.
Thank you, team. You really raised an interesting point, yeah, from the corporate perspective. Indeed, there's quite a bit of commitment made by companies, particularly listed companies. I think that the challenge now is how do they live up to those statements and deliver the commitment. Any other views, Mr. Pang, apart from biofuels? Are there anything from China or the region that you observe as a bottom-up example?
Yeah, there are some. As we discussed even in the inside, for instance, for the electric vehicles, it is one very good example of the bottom up. I talk with my colleagues. They are saying that really the petrol price is going so dramatically. They cannot afford, to drive, the petrol cars. So that's the reason. More and more people are using. The electrical vehicles. Now, the consumption, the production in China is increasing dramatically. So big figure. I just give you one instance. Even in the first half of this year, the production consumption in China, it is more than 3.7 million units already. So it is a huge figure. It is developing so fast. Of course, like for the charging pollers, we have a great demand from the society, from the people. That's the reason, the government, like the municipal government, is building more and more, charging pollers, in consideration of the people's needs. So gradually, we are changing the policies from the central government. Even like our Premier, Mr. Li Keqiang, he giving several lectures, encourage, development of such, electrical vehicles. But this requirement is from the bottom up. That is from the community, from the people, from society. Yeah, this is one example. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great example of the EV. I think you really pointed to the demand side driven, that people wanted EV. Of course, the driver may be because the fuel price is high. Yeah. So, but that's a good example. But I also think that in China, a lot of the renewable companies started with private sector. So they are not government owned, but they are also now making huge business out of renewable. That's probably another example to say they're not government sponsored company, but they started like on both solar and wind started in the private sector. Yeah, that's a good example as well from my perspective. Yeah, Sam, you have something to.
Good example about EV and energy security or energy conservation and environmental protection is the country level. However, now it's going down to the community level and consumer level. For instance, and the housing companies are promoting the house with the small battery and PV and EV and all connected. And for the energy security or balance the demand and supply, or probably it's possible to take the low price network electricity when it is, and then use the battery. And when the price is high, they use the battery, and from the small battery at the house and connected EV, or such kind of like energy security, energy conservation, that is now into the market, and it is getting more popular in the community.
Yes, really good example. And I know that Japan has always been leading on energy efficiency side. The point that you mentioned about property, real estate industry now offering this more energy efficient housing, connecting the technology, the network, everything together is great example. And I really felt that you gave an example of, the necessity is the mother of the innovation. And this also like demand, consumer driven. They worry about supply, about blackout, if there's no security of energy supply. Great point. I would like to look to our community. Are there any questions, Tatsu, from our audience?
Yes, we have. So we have received a question from William from Hong Kong. So as a reflection to Tim's view.
William wanted to off the mute and ask our panels and speakers directly. William, would you like to do that, to give your voice there? Thank you.
Yes. Okay, good morning. to you there, and good afternoon and good evening to anyone else. So yes, it's very interesting views from both your presenters. So I just wanted to just see if you wanted to add to anything towards Tim's view, where he says that he sees more use of nuclear, of gas, CCUS, and ammonia in Asia. But what do you think about other mixes as well?
So
would anyone like to yeah.
Thanks, William. So I think William is building on the point that Tim made earlier about nuclear gas, ammonia, and other technology being deployed. Are there any other you wanted to build on in terms of technology perspective, Mr. Pang or Sam?
Yeah, as Tim also mentioned, for instance, in China, we are encouraging the solar power stations to build, in large scale, especially in Xinjiang, Gansu, and Ningxia, in the western areas of China. Now you can notice that, the price of the solar power, it is decreasing so dramatically. Now it is only, in Chinese, it is only 0.12 yuan. So it is like only less than 2 cents. Yeah. So dramatically decreased. That's the reason we have this kind of foundations already to develop the green hydrogen, as you have mentioned. Now China is developing the green hydrogen in such regions like Ningxia. We are having such technologies. Even we are considering to build this kind of the pipes to convey the hydrogen. So it is a very good example. And also like Japan, also Saudi Arabia are cooperating in some projects in Saudi Arabia, to produce ammonia from the green hydrogen. So it is another very good example. To bring the ammonia from Saudi Arabia to Japan to China. Yeah, it is much convenient for this kind of a transportation. I do suppose, yeah, this is definitely the trend, and also China government is encouraging this kind of trend. But to develop in larger scale, of course, it takes some years. Maybe after 15 years will be in large scale. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have
yes.
I have some
Sam,
comments.
please.
Yeah, it's the primary energy sources are renewables and fossil fuels and nuclear. And the question is how we cook those primary energy sources and create low carbon fuels and transport and utilize. There are many different pathways to do that. Like, for instance, Mr. Pan mentioned about ammonia. Ammonia could be the most viable and practical option to transport hydrogen a long distance over the ocean. Or we will, some countries are now starting to develop small modular reactors of the nuclear. That is an option. And the other, like, in the short distance, I think this hydrogen can be transported by pipeline, or the hydrogen can be mixed into the natural gas pipeline to reduce the carbon footprint. So there are many options, and we will have, and technology breakthroughs will make that there's some different options to come to the market. So we need to look at the many types of the options by the region, by the background of the region and the situation of the regions.
Thank you, Sam. That's a great addition. Yes, there's no silver bullet to resolve the very complex issues we are faced with. And you really made that point very clear. We also call that place-based energy transition, which is situational, depending on the resource, the market, the technology available to the community in different places. Great point. Thank you so much. I'd like to come back again to see whether we have any more questions from our audience. Are there any more?
Yep, no additional questions so far.
Right. May I also ask one question again to our panelists and Sam as well? Is Tim actually mentioned in his point of view that across regional kind of multilateral policy may be challenging to make, given the diversity of Asia. But what actually keeps the policymakers awake at night in different markets? Can you, share some insights from the regional perspective or China perspective or Samsung about, Japan or Korea? Yeah. What actually keep the policymakers awake at night? What worries them? What their top of mind concerns? Tim, you would like to go?
Should I go first again, and then we see where we get to? But yeah, I think the key thing really is keeping the lights on. And by that, I mean more than just keeping the lights on in our houses, but keeping industry running, keeping transport moving, and keeping food in the supply chain. We're starting to see the impact of energy on food very much now in terms of production in Europe, and a lot of concerns there. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is that there's an awful lot of, most of our conversation today has been on renewables and carbon reduction and sustainability. But I did read the ASEAN Center for Energy, the Jakarta-based think tank, which just produced their ASEAN Energy Outlook to 2050. And if you read it, they say that energy demand in the region is going to triple by 2050. I mean, that's a massive challenge for policymakers to start off with. So this is talking about Southeast Asian countries. But it does say that fossil fuels will remain the primary source, and renewables will be left at 12% in the medium term without policy interventions, and only 15% if there are some interventions by 2025. And that the region will become a net importer of natural gas and coal by 2039. So for all that we're talking about, the big think tank of the region that I sit in is still saying that fossil fuels are going to dominate. And so that's the dilemma. I think if you're a government and your people and your voters are saying to you, we want cleaner, greener and cheaper fuels, and replacing 150 years of established industry where people haven't really paid that much attention to energy, quite frankly. People have switched the lights on, they've fueled up whatever they've needed, and off they go. It's been very reliable. Airplanes don't fall out the sky because the fuel's contaminated anywhere in the world. It's a very, very efficient industry. And if, say, you're talk about replacing gasoline with hydrogen, you're talking about 18 times the volume, even for compressed hydrogen, just to get the same energy output. So huge demands, right? So go back to what I said, if energy demand's going to triple and it's all going to be fossil fuels, how does that square up with all the policy statements that people are making and promising by 2050, which is not that far away, right? Most of us remember 2020 and 1990. So 2050 is not that far in the other direction. And, when you start your career, it seems a long way off, but I still feel young, but it's getting closer and closer.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I mean, very pointed, a dilemma to balance. Yeah, on the one side, you mentioned about cleaner, greener, cheaper, and also securer, Not forget about being secure as well. And at the same time, we are not that far away from the the midpoint of this century, 2050. Yes, we are now 2022. And if I look at the Paris Agreement and talking about 2030, we're actually in the midpoint. Yeah, when we talk about Paris Agreement, end of 2015, you think of, okay, yeah, we still have 15 years to go. Now 7+ years gone, and we are in the midpoint of 2030, and we are halfway to 2050. Great point. Thank you. Sam, anything to add on? What make the policymakers awake in your mind?
Yeah, it's a simple point and very urgent, is how to prepare and manage this coming winter.
Yeah.
Without the supply of energy from Russia. Yeah, that's an issue not only for Europe, but Asia has an impact, but impacted by the price volatility and also possible disruption of the LNG from Russia will impact some of the Asian countries.
Indeed, Sam, great point. It's not about longer term. It is about this week, this winter. Yeah, right. Short-term security is a top of mind. Great point. Mr. Pang, anything from you from policy?
I do suppose. Yeah, I do agree with Sam is talking about security. Definitely, there are 4 headaches. I do suppose. The first one is security. I mean, how to guarantee sufficient, supply of the power. It is very important. As you have noticed in China last year, the second half of last year, we shut down so many plants because we are in serious shortage of the power. A lot of producers came to us, to give a lot of complaints. Yeah, because there is a price, negotiation between the power producers and the coal providers. Yeah, a lot of this kind of disputes because the power price in China, it is controlled price. That's the reason. A lot of contradictions. That's the reason. So, for instance, at present for the petroleum, crude oil dependency on import, it is more than 71%. For the natural gas, it is more than 45%. So China's central government is much more worried concerning the power. The energy security. It is a very serious issue. That's the reason why the central government is giving a very serious instructions like this year for the petroleum production in China. They said definitely we should be more than 200 million metric tons. Yeah, this is a red line. We should reach this kind of a red line definitely. This is the bottom line. Yeah, this is very serious. This is the first headache, security. The second one, it is how to balance, the development and also the carbon reduction. It is very serious because Mr. Xi, our chairman, is so serious. For instance, he, last year, he gave one promise in the United Nations, that is China will shut down, any building up of overseas coal power stations. It is really giving a lot of, influence on our industries because a lot of our companies are building a lot of coal power stations in Indonesia, in other countries, and also they are in need such coal power stations. But still, we are very serious to cut down the export of the power stations. Yeah, of course, it is affecting a lot of laborers, a lot of running of the plants. Yeah, giving a lot of bad performance for the plants. But still, we are giving a very, serious, insistence on such policy. Yeah. This is how to balance the development and also the carbon reduction. The third one, it is a stability. Like in Xinjiang, in Gansu, a lot of power, solar power and also windmills. But how to guarantee the stability of the power supply? Because we have this kind of the grid. But how to guarantee the stability? It is a very serious headache. Yeah, we should consider also this factor, seriously. The fourth one, it is called, low price for the normal people. As I mentioned, for the Chinese, mega trend, that is common prosperity. That is how to guarantee the normal people, they can afford, I mean, the power costs. This is also another very big headache. Thank you.
I think that's a good point. If I can quickly jump in on that, the prices for people. So, there's one country in Southeast Asia that's spending $50 billion subsidizing gasoline prices. And at the same time, asking for kind of international development to build more renewables. So squaring this puzzle of kind of affordability, it's not an easy trick to pull off when you're running a government and you have to face the electorate every 5 years. So, it's easy for us who kind of, sit sometimes in our air-conditioned offices or apartments made of concrete, steel and glass, all of which have consumed a lot of energy, to say we need to switch without necessarily understanding the starting position of Asia and, kind of what's facing us. We mentioned this winter, but over kind of, the short and medium and long term. So I would say, it's easy sometimes, to kind of pontificate, particularly from afar, and by afar I mean the West, but have a look at the situation on the ground. And that's why I think these pulse surveys are really important to actually kind of, and the role of the WEC to bring to the world's attention, what is the starting position here in Asia.
Brilliant, all brilliant. Lana, you wanted to chip in, please.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, listening to all of the speakers around what's keeping policy makers up at night, one of the things I want to throw into the debate is something we've been pondering on at the Council: energy democracy. So we are aware of everything happening around renewables, but it's going to have an impact on supply chains. We are aware of the big drive around renewables, but it's also going to have an impact on people and jobs. I heard from Mr. Pang, the bottom-up movement. And I think at the Council, when we talk about bottom-led activities, is really trying to drive this energy democracy. Because I also listen to Tim, who pontifies that.
You got on mute, Lana.
Sorry, 2050 or 2040 is not far. And then you look at China, which has an aging population and grappling with that. So what is the democratic process in all of this? And how do we really start to put society to help policymakers in driving those decisions? And so for me, when we start to look through the concept of bottom-led, it's all of these things. So just something for us to ponder. We may not be able to answer that, but we are really moving towards what we are beginning to term as energy democracy. And who are those voices that need to support a lot of the decisions that needs to be made?
Thanks for the addition, and a new concept in a way, energy democracy. I think a lot debate to come about that. I wanted to turn to our audience. Tatsu, are there any questions coming from our audience? I noticed there's some new joiners as well. Mark, Kushan. Any more questions, Tatsu?
Currently, there are no additional comment or question on chat function. Oh, sorry, I have a new question.
Oh, right.
Yasmin. So the question is, what would be the best way to contact the speakers and the panel? Sorry, so speakers and the panelists if I have any suggestions? Thank you. So she would like to contact with panelists, and also Gary-san from Singapore. So the question would be, the results of pulse survey are grouped by regions. So, but Asia as a region is quite a diverse one. So would we be considering grouping assessment by cities in the future? So that might be for the Lana. So inside team might be. So
yeah, I think so. It's for Lana. Lana.
Hello. Yes, we will consider that. in the future. That's something that we will work with Xiaowei about. So we'll see.
We need more responses, right? So you can get
yes,
some critical mass in your groupings.
We are looking at that as well, and that's been planned for.
Thank you, Lana, and we will look into that in due course. And I also wanted to call on our member committees in different countries to really getting more responses or getting your member companies to more involved in participating. I think I wanted to ask one last question because it's rare opportunity. We have really prestigious speakers like Tim, Pang, and Sam as well, Lana, all together. Is that, you know, we talked about quite a bit different areas, technology, society, policymakers. One maybe ending on a bit of good point is, are there anything we can learn from Asia in enabling just and clean transition? Again, I'm trying to look for good examples, anything that come to your mind, something that you see, yes, Asia already can be a great example for many other regions to look at when we talk about energy transition. Anything come to mind? Who wanted to start, Sam? Anything in your mind or team, Mr. Pang?
Yeah, I think it's the Asia, the many countries, they do not have the indigenous supply, enough indigenous supply sources. So I think it's the trading of the energy sources are very important for the Asian region. Apart from by the distance from the supply source to the market. And the one good example that the Asian countries are trying to develop is the hydrogen trading over the ocean. Like Mr. Pan mentioned about ammonia. And Japan and Korea are leading that the development of the supply chain of the blue and green ammonia from Middle East and Australia, United States to Asian countries. And also Singapore is looking at an ammonia as a maritime fuel. So that is the one example that the global community can learn from Japan. Actually, Germany is now moving to the ammonia infrastructure development because of this energy crisis, and they are accelerating the shifting to the renewable energy sources, but they cannot develop the internal renewable resources in a short period of time, and they're trying to import hydrogen by ammonia.
Yeah, thank you. Good point from technology perspective, trading of energy as well as, you know, long distance transportation of, you know, the new energies like hydrogen and ammonia. Mr. Pang and team, anything to add on? Anything we can, you know, the Asia good example for energy transition?
Yeah, I do suppose, like in China, for example, it is a kind of a synergy. It is a kind of combination between the central government, I mean, the companies, and also from the private sectors, yeah, from different points of view. So it is very important. Like for the solar panels, as you have mentioned, it is the idea is beginning from the private sectors, yeah, you know, from private companies developing more than 15 years until the big large scale. But during such a stage, when the government noticed that it is a very good direction, they are giving some subsidies anyway to support, to encourage such a development, and also especially to encourage the applications, yeah, in China. So it is very important. Like at present, you know, for the new electric, for the electric vehicles. Yeah, this is one very good application. Even for the production for the green hydrogen, also another, application. So China is giving a lot of this kind of pilot applications. Yeah, this is very important. I do suppose it is kind of a synergy.
I think that's good. If I jump in quickly, as we're running out of time. This region produces a lot of engineers, and I'm quite involved in the higher education here in Singapore. You know, if you look at the courses that some of the universities are offering, particularly at postgraduate, they're introducing kind of engineering plus sustainability, engineering plus economics, engineering plus policy, and giving people I think the skills that are needed in this kind of energy transition world and even energy security world as well. So I'm seeing some changes in the way that engineering's being taught. And let's face it, it's been taught the same way for probably the last 50 years, that you're either a kind of electrical engineer, a chemical engineer, a civil engineer. But there are some developments there. And yeah, we're seeing, of course, some in the West and as well. But I'm quite encouraged by what I'm seeing here in terms of the kind of more holistic engineer that's needed to kind of think outside the box, and particularly bringing economics into it. Because let's face it, a lot of these problems are not techno, they're more techno-economic to solve. And we've heard some good examples there. And I think some were mentioned in the chat, like net zero Teesside and the work being done on business models to enable the transition. So I think there's good lessons from academic sector in Asia that could be, you know, more widely spread across the region, but also globally.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for that scaling up thing, and particularly adding more dimension to science and engineering or education. That's great. I saw one hands up. Do you have a question, or is that just a...
Hi. Thank you. I'm Keshan from Sri Lanka. Actually, I have a kind of practical and probably must be a hard question to ask. And since we are discussing about policy and transition in Sri Lanka, you know, we are, facing kind of a hard financial situation. And also when it comes to electricity sector, we have kind of maximum 2,700 maximum power demand megawatts. So when it comes to electricity network, we have 900 megawatt coal power plant, which run as a base load power plant. Now the power plant actually commissioned in 2012, and now the plant is facing huge technical difficulties. Last month, it was one plant was breakdown, and today there's another plant was breakdown. So I think government may have to go for a new power plant, which can be coal. Of course, it's really difficult, and it can be a gas power plant, or maybe renewable or battery storage. So what would be the best possible opportunity at this level where government could consider? Thanks for your advice in advance.
That's a very specific question from our panels. Anything advice to the Sri Lanka government, as you know, they are facing breakdown of their current power plants, and what do they need to build? Very quick.
Well, quickly, I would say don't look at today's prices, but look at low carbon options that are out there, including gas. You could rock up an FSRU and gas to power relatively quickly. Look at some floating options, perhaps. So I think Bangladesh has some of those. So that would just be a quick one. But the longer term answer, of course, is looking at kind of renewable storage and all of the other things we've been talking about. But yeah, tough question.
Tough question. Right, I'm conscious of time. I hope, Kashan, that gave you some food for thought. And I wanted, very 30 seconds again to, thank our prestigious panelists, the Mr. Pang team, including Sam, for their wonderful views around a very broad topic about energy transition. And also thank Lana for sharing the global view. I think in very short summary, we touch upon all the things of the energy trilemma, from security to access to sustainability. And we also touched upon all the players in the energy, we call energy plus community, from consumer to supplier to policymaker, as well as, to community as well. They are at the center as we're moving towards democratized energy. And it is a humanizing energy vision to build a sustainable energy future, having a clean and just transition for all. With that, I wanted to concluding this discussion, and it's quite a long discussion, but we didn't feel it's so long because a lot of brilliant views. And this recording will be shared for those who couldn't make to today. Thank you very much, everyone, for your brilliant participation. And we would like to see you all and have all of your inputs for our next round of the energy survey. Thank you. Sam, anything from you?
Oh, just thank you, Lana, Xiaowei, and Tim and Tang, and for your great contribution today's dialogue. And also Tatsu, thank you for coordinating this dialogue. And the discussions provided issues from the various angles, and we consensus is that we are facing very complex transition, and we need to look at the short term, long term, and from the different angles. But thank you very much, and we will continue this survey, and the pulse survey will give us some good insight and information for future for our the policy making, and also the handling the energy issues. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating today.
Okay, thank you.
Bye
Thank you.
for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.